Hey guys, Char5 here, and today we are tackling Pinhead from the Hellraiser series, which I didn't know was a series. I thought it was one movie or two and that was it, but no, apparently there are many more, and I think there's one on the way, actually. I actually watched Hellraiser for the sake of talking about it for Creepy Month. I was never interested in it, really, at all. How did I come to know Hellraiser, or, well, more so Pinhead than Hellraiser? Because I came to know Hellraiser because of Pinhead, but I'm not sure how I came to know Pinhead. It might have been in Bride of Chucky with that one scene where they throw nails into John Ritter's character's face, and then Chucky says, where have I seen that before? And he's talking about, like, it's a reference to Pinhead. And the other reason I've seen Pinhead before is a parody movie called Stan Helsing, which is about as bad as, you know, most parody movies nowadays go, following that whole trope. And there was a Pinhead, you know, character in that movie, so I guess I kind of came to know him a little bit there before I actually watched the movie. I guess I'll talk a little bit about the piece itself. I found it really hard. I wasn't in the best state of mind when trying to draw this. It got kind of difficult for me, especially like right after drawing Ghostface. Well, I didn't draw this right after I drew Ghostface, but like the day after, I don't know, I was just incredibly tired. I woke up, I got on to draw this, and I was just so unmotivated, and just, I don't know, and I guess because of how tired I was, for whatever reason, I was in a bad mood, and it got difficult for me to draw this because I felt like I wasn't doing it right. At first I felt like, oh, the eyes are too small, and like this reference is so iconic, like, because despite what you'd think, there aren't many different images of Pinhead on the internet, so like the one that I'm drawing is the one probably most people have seen of him, so it's so iconic, and you know, if you compare them side by side, you can definitely tell what I did wrong. But of course, like I've said before, to me it's not always about like following reference exactly. It's about, you know, drawing what you can and just, again, using it as a reference, not necessarily copying off of it. The thing about it is you're supposed to use it to draw your own version of it. As long as it's recognizable, I think, you know, you've achieved what you're set out to do. Of course, there are things that you're doing wrong. I'm not saying that I'm not doing things wrong. Of course I am. But I think he's recognizable enough to the point where you can say that that's Pinhead. And it's not just about his features, like the lines on his face or the pins in his head, but, you know, there's a certain element to his nose, his eyes, his mouth, stuff like that. I didn't capture it incredibly well, but, you know, I gave it the best shot with what I had. So, yeah, I watched Hellraiser, I think like a day before actually tackling this drawing, and it was a very interesting movie, but again, it was one of those that like I've said before, where the focus isn't really much on the villain, and I have to say, doubly so in the case of Hellraiser, because Pinhead would become a mascot of sorts, like the face of the Hellraiser franchise, when in reality he's one of many monsters. Like they're called the Cenobites, and he's like the lead Cenobite. He didn't even have a name. He never has a name, from what I looked up. Like, Pinhead is not his official name. It's just like a given name that the fans came up with, that I don't even think the creator of Pinhead likes. I don't think he likes that name, but it's something that everyone came up with because he has pins in his head, you know. But he has other names like the Hell Priest or something like that. In the first movie, he was just known as the lead Cenobite, and to me, it was like I didn't really understand it. Maybe I need to watch the rest of them, because the rest of the movies, I think, do go more in-depth with the character and his lore and stuff like that. But nothing about his initial, you know, appearance in the film really sparked much interest to me, because I think the main character, Frank Cotton, I think is more interesting, and you know, his trials and tribulations and how the woman is helping him out to come back to life. I think that's far more interesting than the whole Cenobite lore. And you'd almost expect these characters, the Cenobites, to be neutral, you know, like you can tell that because they're from hell or whatever, that they're evil, that they're bad guys, but I think that kind of ruins a little bit of the there's something lost there when you make two separate sets of villains, because you have Frank and his mistress, whose name I can't remember for whatever reason, and then you have the Cenobites, who are, you know, supposed to be evil and all that stuff. But I feel like if you kind of made them more like, oh, they're just doing their job, I feel like that would have connected better. Then it's like, oh, we're evil, and that's the point of us. We're ruthless, all because you solved a stupid puzzle, you know. I thought that was kind of weird. It's kind of a gory movie. It's weird in that way. Not really what I'd call a scary movie at all. I don't even think I'd classify it as horror. Again, to me, when it came to the character of Pinhead, there was, to me, nothing really special. Again, only because of the pins in his head is he at all a memorable character, but there's nothing about him, to me, that really stands out or separates him from, like, the other Cenobites. Like, there's the one that looks a little bit more feminine than... He's kind of like a feminine version of Pinhead, and he has, like... Or it has, like, hooks in its... on its neck, so it kind of opens and creates this, like, vagina-like neck, which is really weird. There's, like, the really gross fat one, and the Nemesis-looking one with, like, the really weird teeth. That one was my favorite. That one was... I thought that one was really funny. And, like, kind of cute in a creepy way, too. Like, there's something about its mouth movements, I think, are kind of, like, funny. But to me, that one was the most memorable one. But other than, like, the deep voice and stuff like that, like, nothing seemed all too particular about this entity. I don't even want to call him a monster, because, like, there's nothing inherently scary about him. Because I honestly thought that Hellraiser was going to be about Pinhead, or that Pinhead would be the main antagonist of the movie, and in some ways he's not even the main antagonist of the series when you think about, well, at least from what I've read. Again, I didn't watch the rest of the series, and I don't know if I want to, because I got a kick out of the first one, I guess. Like, I don't know where it stands as, like, if I like it or not, but I at least was able to pay enough attention to the point where, like, I knew what was going on. Because, again, I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to pay that much attention, or, like, not mock the film. And there wasn't really too much to mock. I thought that the mythos was really interesting, and what they do with it is pretty sad and eerie, but I wouldn't say scary or even spooky. His design, I've always thought, is interesting. Nothing. Again, it's just like it's a white, like, it's a pale white dude with pins in his head. Like, there's nothing inherently scary about his design, but there is something unique. I will say that. Like, it is something that's immediately recognizable. It's something that, like, even if you've never seen, you're like, oh, that's Pinhead. And I don't know. Like, there's not really much to say about his character, considering that, again, I don't know much, but at the same time, I don't think that there's much to know. You know, like, he does have a backstory. I know that. I know that he was, like, a war veteran or something, and he got something chopped off, like, it was a limb, an arm, or a leg, something like that. And then, like, he becomes a Cenobite, and I don't know, I couldn't follow, and I honestly kind of didn't want to, but I was looking forward to drawing him, because I didn't know what I would be able to do with his design, if I was going to be able to make him look good. And in my head, it was like, it's a simple design. I'm sure I'll be able to do something great with it. And maybe it was due to frustrations or what have you, but I don't know if you noticed earlier, I actually wrote something about how I found his design, or like me drawing him, I had sort of a harder time drawing him than I did Regan, and Regan to me was like supposed to be the most difficult thing to draw because of the detail. And you know, Pinhead, despite how little detail he has in his design, I found it somewhat more difficult, and I think the reason for that is due to the simplicity. Since there's not much, like, and I said it with Ghostface too. I think I did. You can draw him; he's instantly recognizable, and it's so easy. With Pinhead, it's like, yes, in theory he's easy, but I think because of his facial structure, that's what makes him more difficult, because he is recognizable. You know, like if you draw something off, it's like it's not going to look like him anymore. However, I do think that because of how recognizable and how distinguished, you know, his design is, you can just draw pins on a dude and be like, oh, okay, that's him. I know who that is immediately. But it is, I guess, in some ways, like, as an artist, you kind of have this obsession with, like, it needs to look, you know, at least somewhat similar to the reference or to what I'm drawing, and if it doesn't, then I'm screwed. And there are a lot of things, like I've said before, you always have to take liberties because it's just a reference. If you're trying to replicate it, like, down to the most minute detail, you will go insane because it's hard. Like, I know that a lot of artists, bless them, like, they have such facility to and such ease to draw, you know, things that are just copies of like an image that they see. They don't even use it as reference. They're just like straight up replicating an image, and that to me is incredibly impressive because it's something that I've been doing my whole life wrong. You know, like, I've never been able, I think, to fully replicate an image that I see. I've always, you know, gotten close, or, you know, yeah, it sort of looks like that image that you copied off of, but nothing that I say comes close to replicating it. And in this case particularly, but I still do sort of enjoy the way it came out, because the shape of the mouth, I think, is one of the things that's a dead giveaway when it comes to, if you look at my reference and this image side by side, you can tell that I did the mouth really wrong, but there's something about the shape of the mouth that's really interesting to me, despite how wrong I drew it in comparison to the reference. And I've never been particularly good at drawing teeth, so to me here, it's like, it really was a matter of shading that when I see it, it's like, actually those teeth aren't half bad. But because of his pale white face and, you know, his very distinguished features and the lighting on him, it's another case of like having to play around. And it's something I'm noticing with a lot of the designs for what I'm doing with Inktober and with Creepy Month. Most of these characters have a really black and white color scheme, and it's really interesting because I think it's great in terms of, you know, what we're trying to practice here. So like they're always very recognizable, but in some cases, for example, Pinhead, like, you really have to work those highlights, those shadows, in order to give them form, in order to give them shape, because otherwise it's just really plain and boring, and like images get lost. And in this case, like, I really have to work the shadows behind the ears, the depth, the texture, and it's something I don't think I've ever really wanted to or had the opportunity to work with, but I'm glad that I'm doing it, because I'm actually sort of exceeding my own expectations in terms of how I'm executing a lot of these images. And this is the final result. Again, I'm not 100% in love with how it came out, but I wouldn't say I hate it either. So that's good. I mean, again, to me, a lot of this is new, and I'm still really exploring what it is I can versus what I know how to do in terms of my artistry. Again, when it comes to shadows, when it comes to shading, when it comes to highlights, texture, depth, and to me, it's because, like I've said before, I am a cartoonist. I'm so used to drawing cartoons, so when it comes to tackle something realistic, it's really hard for me, but at the same time, I do enjoy it because it is a challenge. But tomorrow, we will be semi-wrapping up Monster Movie Week. And, God, the next one, I should have waited until the 7th day. Man, Okay, well, until next time, stay safe and stay awesome. This is Char 5 signing off.
Who you calling Pinhead?